Uriel, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Justin. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on our podcast. For those who don't know, Uriel Berrum is the co-founder of Effect. It's a mission-based digital media agency based in Denver. We met actually like a month ago, or about a few weeks ago, through my good friend Owen, who actually was my first episode on Breaking Bread. And Owen really shared with me your passion for being in the political space and some of the work that you've been doing in Denver. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. We haven't had many political social impact people on our show, so this is going to be a good discussion about what that looks like and what the diversity looks like in the space. So thank you again for taking the time.
Of course, Justin. I'm excited to be here. Excited about what you've been able to do with Breaking Bread. Looking forward to giving Owen a run for his money on episode one. And just an honor that you invited me to come on, my friend.
Yeah, we're here for it, man. We're here for it. So let's kick it off. I would love to hear, like, where did your passion to play a part in this political landscape come from?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So as you mentioned, Effect.org is a mission-based digital agency, really focusing on trying to tackle some of the hardest issues in our society. And my passion, truthfully, to get into civic duty and the political sphere actually came through my parents. I'm a first generation Mexican American. So the legal system, truth be told, was a part of my life since I was a child. Watching my mom navigate through the immigration system to eventually being able to get residency and becoming a U.S. citizen. As a kid, I remember that ceremony of her becoming a citizen. Waving the American flag and trying to ask myself what that all meant. And as I became an adult, I realized like how important politics was for the stability of someone's life. So that's kind of where it started. And I think I've had a great career, and it's led me to found a company that I'm able to actually make a difference with some of the tools that millennials use on a day-to-day basis.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I have to ask, like, what was that journey like, being a first generation Mexican American, like kind of growing up in the States? Can you talk a little bit about that, what that path was like for you?
Yeah, of course. I think I think one of the central themes of my childhood was stepping into a new culture. You hear the term code switching a lot, especially in the first generation space, in the POC space, of being able to occupy all of these different spaces. So that's literally just what that was. It was me having to navigate a college environment that was unfamiliar to my family, a professional environment. I went off and worked in banking at Goldman Sachs, which is where I met Owen. It was one of those things where I essentially had to trailblaze a path because I was the first in my family to also go to college and finish college. So it was one of those things where I had to like more or less learn on the job. I think growing up it was difficult, but I think now that I'm on the other side, it was all worth it, because now I can look back and hopefully be kind of an example for young Latinos, young people of color that are in similar positions that want to navigate the system and find a good career and a good path.
That's awesome, man. And it's always interesting to hear people's stories as like a first generation, because some people may have siblings, or they have people who they can look up to who can provide like a course for them in terms of like the do's and don'ts and where to go, where not to go. But it seems like you kind of did it on your own, obviously with your parents' support, who were also figuring it out at the same time. So I think that adds another layer to your story, which is really, really incredible. So you mentioned it.
Absolutely.
You mentioned a little bit about like, you spent some time in the political realm. I think I saw something. You worked for the Senate's office, and then you leave for Goldman Sachs. For most people, especially if you be in the NBA, that's the pinnacle. That's the goal. But after
Right.
2 years, you leave. You leave this cushy job. So I have to ask, like, why did you leave that to go back into politics and policy?
Well, Justin, first of all, I wouldn't call it cushy working for Goldman. I
Touche,
mean, I think,
touche.
yeah, I think on the outside, you know, it seems like it could be one of those things that you very well may spend the rest of your life working for a company like Goldman Sachs, and I think for some people that works. But to be honest, I quickly realized when I got the job at Goldman that it wasn't something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Um, and I think a couple of reasons led to that. Uh, um, First and foremost, I had a great experience there. I think it was like a crash course in business with all of the skills that I learned, you know, the qualitative skills, the quantitative skills, working for a massive, prestigious organization. I wouldn't trade that for the world. But there was still a disconnect. You know, I think for me, and what's intrinsic in the work that I do now is impact and meaning. It's one thing to be able to have a portfolio where the end goal is making sure that your client is paying you back and you are making money, and the central goal is always profit. And it's another thing to know that your central goal is making sure that, you know, students in low income communities are having access to college scholarships, or you're leading the way to make sure that a municipality is creating a sustainable climate office to be able to combat climate change at the municipal level. So for me, that impact component was missing at Goldman. And I asked myself, actually a mentor asked me when I was about a year in, he said, you know, let's zoom out a little bit, think about yourself now, and then thinking about yourself in 10 years when you could potentially have the job that your boss has.
Yeah.
Looking at getting the job that his boss has, how are you going to feel? Are you going to be content? Are you going to be okay with that? And right off the bat, my answer was no. Like, you know, full stop. It was no, because, you know, I wasn't fulfilled in the work that I was doing, even though it was, like you said, it was, you know, it's a, you know, quote unquote cushy job with, you know, they call it the golden handcuffs. You probably heard about that.
Yeah,
You
I've
know,
heard that. I've heard that quite a bit.
they,
Even in
they, you
NDAs
know,
too, you know, I hear it.
oh yeah. Oh, I mean, it's so easy to just be like, oh, you know, like I have dreams and I want to do something else, but man, that promotion looks great. That pay raise sounds great. You know, like I just bought a new car. You know,
Right.
I just signed a lease to this fat, you know, penthouse in downtown. Like,
Right.
you know, all of that kind of, I feel like I don't want to say kills dreams, but I feel like that contributes to some people's inability to kind of make the leap.
Right.
And you know, I fortunately had mentors that was able to kind of recalibrate me to know that that was in my future if I didn't be intentional about it. So when one of my mentors asked me that, it was a wake up call where I realized like, oh man, I gotta really figure out what I want to do in life, which led me to transition out of doing what I was doing at Goldman, even though I did have the perception of my close friends, of people around me giving me that like shock factor of like, you know, why would you do that? You had it so
That
good.
was my next question too. Like, so like who are the people around you who weren't a part of those conversations? Like, you're gonna leave Goldman for like, what are you gonna do next, kind of thing.
Right. And truth be told, I didn't have an answer of what I was going to do next. Like, it was the first time in my life, to be honest, Justin, where I was like, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
I
It
actually
takes
went to Europe.
no, go ahead.
I actually went to Europe for 6 weeks, and I backpacked through like 10 different countries. And
Wow.
I had a come into God moment. I was like, wow, like there is a lot to life.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people that I met who weren't as career driven, I would say, but seemed to be the happiest people on earth. And I was a little conflicted. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like what am I doing? I'm over here like I'm trying to check every box in my career, and I
And they
don't
got
feel this way at all.
they got a whole different lifestyle out there.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't have a plan, but I think things eventually work out, and I couldn't be happier, to be honest.
Yeah. So you say you visited about 10 countries. Was there a country where you had like the revelation? Like, is there one that like sticks out of all the countries you visited that were like, if anybody's doing backpacking, they got to go back here?
Oh man, so I think I'll reduce it down to my favorite city. It was Berlin,
Ooh,
Germany.
nice, nice. I've
Have you
been.
been?
Yes, it's
Okay,
crazy. Like they
okay,
have like a really cool like hip hop culture out there. Really
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, you never would have think in
yeah.
Berlin, but
So I was so blown away on how the city has done what it has needed to do to overcorrect the history of Germany. Right,
yeah,
that's kind of what I felt. I felt like because of what happened during the earlier half of last century, World War II and the Holocaust and everything, I truly felt in the culture in Berlin that they were really trying to like really turn it around. So I felt like it was a truly international city where people were accepting of themselves, where they were trying to promote that culture of acceptance, which led to I feel like a really interesting and just culture and environment. So I would definitely recommend if anyone's in that neck of the woods to stop by in Berlin, check it out. I'm a history buff, so definitely do the walking tours, go to East Berlin, go to West Berlin, and just kind of see the development there. The Berlin Wall fell in '89. It wasn't really too long ago.
that's a long ago.
So you could see the discrepancies of both sides of Berlin and how one is really advanced and the other one's catching up. So yeah,
That's awesome. And so you said you took 6 weeks or 6 months of backpacking across Europe, and
six
then
weeks.
6 weeks. And so when you came back, you were now on this mission. Like, what was that transition back to the U.S. looking like, and what was in your mind in terms of like what you wanted to try and accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think it's a natural thing to when you're in a position of transition, right? When you're like in a place where more or less the world is yours, the endless opportunities, the world is up for grabs. I think the natural tendency is to revert back to what's familiar. So I came back and I'm like, man, I have to find a job. Like I gotta utilize my Goldman my experience at Goldman, put that on the top of the resume and just try to find a job. I think I was already starting to realize that I need mission based work. So I was like looking at places where I feel like I was going to be aligned. So I actually got to the final round of an autonomous driving vehicle startup out
Oh
of
wow.
Silicon Valley. And I was stoked. It was like a former Goldman colleague that went over there to the startup. And I was like, man, this is what I'm looking for, right? Like working for
Yeah.
a highly innovative startup that is like doing something that's going to change the world, right?
Yeah.
I didn't get it. I made it to the final round. They flew me out to Mountain View, California. I prepared, as much as I could. I didn't get it, and I was like, "Oh man, this sucks."
Yeah.
It's a big L. But I but I had a good time interviewing. Um, so then I wouldn't say that jaded me, but I think it gave me like an opportunity to take an inventory of what's next, and I kind of came to the realization that I need to figure out how I can create something where I am impactful, but also have more control of my destiny.
Right.
So in the interim, I actually joined a fellowship called the Urban Leaders Fellowship, where I actually met my co-founder Nick Brown of Effect.org.
Okay.
And this is a 8-week fellowship, 7 or 8 week fellowship that places you with the state official where you're helping to draft legislation that in theory, they're going to propose in the next legislative cycle.
Oh wow.
So it was great. It was a great experience. I got to meet a lot of people. I got to work on a sweeping tax bill that would eventually, in our hopes, in our team hopes, was going to lead to increased funding in like healthcare, infrastructure, and education. And through that fellowship, I met my co-founder. He was already doing the work that we eventually started to build on,
Mhm.
and from there, it just all kind of you don't realize how life just sometimes works out in your
Just starts
favor
rolling.
Yeah, I think if you're open to it, if
Hmm.
spiritually, I think if you're aligned to what you think you need to be doing, it just kind of falls into place. And that was 2018, and now 2021, we built something really special.
That's awesome. And that kind of alludes to my next question. But actually, before I even ask that, people say mission based a lot. Not a lot, but it's coming something that's a lot of companies are trying to implement into their strategy and how they think about their company and how they look externally. How did you go about figuring out what your mission looked like, and what the core of your mission means to you, in a sense, like what you want to see out of what, if a company you start or a company you work for, like that's what it has to be a part of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So the short answer is, my co-founder and I had multiple meetings on this very topic, right? Like, what is our mission? What's our vision? Why are we doing this? And I think the more maybe nuanced answer is just changing your mindset of what your measures of success actually are, right? Like, I think you're a business student. I think the easy measure of the health of a business, the success of a business is it's the bottom line. It's what is the accounting saying? Are you bringing in sales, and are you having a cushy margin, a fat margin that you're able to pay yourself well and also make money? And I think that if you're truly a mission-based organization, you can't fully hold yourself to the very cut and dry metric of the traditional ways to do business. I think you have to bake in the fact that you may not make as much money as you could. You may not bring in the most amount of profit as you possibly could if you were just motivated by that. But there are these intrinsic things that are indirect that you're accomplishing and that you're achieving, right? So for us, the three issues that really drive Effect.org is education, climate change, and voter access. So within those three issues, we've done multiple projects in a variety of different verticals to be able to address those. So with education, we have a portfolio of charter networks, schools that are going into communities, mostly low income, Black and Brown demographics, and we're helping them drive enrollment through our digital means, through Facebook ads, through digital targeting, to be able to serve those kids that normally wouldn't have a chance to have a high quality education. So these are free schools that are really changing the lives of these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we're and on top of that, we're finding ballot measures like the one we did last year, where we closed a vaping loophole in Colorado, where Big Tobacco, get this, Big Tobacco spent millions of dollars to try to defeat this ballot measure,
Mm-hmm.
because if this ballot measure ended up passing, they would have to pay taxes on vaping products that they hadn't had to up until this point. And
Wow.
our mission was to pass this, because if we pass this and we close that loophole, more money was going to go into universal pre-K programs in Colorado. So we were like, hey, this is exactly why we do what we do. We ended up winning that ballot measure 68%.
Wow.
So that was a huge win for us. We beat Big Tobacco with the fraction of their funding. So that's what I mean. If you're truly a mission-based organization, I feel like the outcomes of your work need to have a true social impact, and it can't just be cookie cutter, cut and dry. What's your bottom line? Are you gaining a year-over-year increase in profit? Even though I'm not saying that that's not an objective. It
Yeah.
absolutely is, because you need means to do what you do, but it can't be the only metric, the only objective.
No, that makes total sense, and it's really cool to see what you guys have done in this education, climate control, and voter access, as you mentioned, with your company called Effect, and you sort of become this like social entrepreneur, so to speak. But I would love to know, like, at what point did you feel like, okay, this is it? Like, what was it? What was your first client like? What was it like? Was there like a moment in time where you were like, okay, this makes a total sense? Because you guys, from what you're telling me, from our conversations offline, the company has grown quite a bit. You got interns and fellows coming in now. So like, what was that point where
Yeah.
you were like, this is it, man? Like, this is what it needs to be.
No, that's a great question. So our first big client was a roller coaster. It was great. I now that I think about it more and I'm on this side, when I ask like when I get the question, what's been your favorite client? I gotta say it's the first one because I mentioned I met Nick summer of 2018, and we made the decision to try to build on the social media work that he'd already started doing on his own. And we ended up pitching a ballot measure client that it was a yes campaign at the city level that, if passed, was going to create a fund that was going to provide $170 million in college scholarships to underrepresented students in Denver.
You see, I
So we're
perked
like,
up,
oh
man.
yeah, yeah.
171 million. That's a lot, man.
Yeah, 170 million over 12 years. Nothing like this had happened before. This ballot measure had been tried to be passed 2 times. I think 2 times, definitely one time before, and it lost. People did not have the appetite to have their taxes raised even a little bit to help Denver students get access to scholarships. So I mean, it was definitely a challenge. So it just happened to be that this campaign was already established, but their campaign manager found a new job and left. And we had the connection of like the general consultant, and he was like, hey, like we need help. Do you think you can help us? And we went in there, like just two guys being like, yeah, like we totally could. Let's figure this out. So 2 months left of the campaign. We went in, it was a sprint, we created content, we did a ton of Googling, we figured it all out. And on election night, we didn't know whether or not we won. On election night, there were like, I can't remember, maybe like 7 other ballot measures that won handedly. Like,
Yeah.
some to fund homelessness, some others around education, some around infrastructure. And we were the only ones that it was too close to call. In fact, we were behind on election night. So this was 2018. And we were just
The
like, oh my God,
stress,
this is
the stress.
yeah. This is a big campaign. And we're on the verge of losing. So we ended up actually not knowing whether or not we won this until a week later, until like the final count was completed. And when that final count came back as we won, I honestly think, if I look back to it, I think it was 51% to 49. So it was like barely we won, barely. And it was the last minute drip, Justin. It was like we were like behind all week until the final election result barely tipped us over. So long story short, we passed a ballot measure that resulted in $170 million in college scholarships. And I also think the added like stress of like, man, like this is like do or die, like the efforts that we've been doing comes down to election night. And the fact that we ended up winning, even though it was an emotional roller coaster, I think told us like, hey, like we're on to something. We got to double down on this.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm sure that set the precedent, then, recommendations and referrals, and people now can see your work, and it's something for you to further pitch to other clients. So that's a little too stressful for a first opportunity, but that's amazing that you guys were able to accomplish that, and the amount of money you guys were able to provide for scholarships, or that the fund was able to provide. So really cool.
Yeah, totally.
And so now your company has grown to a considerable amount of employees, like over 100 or so. Is that right or no?
Oh no, I mean, I wish that's the goal. We have
Pumping you up, man.
So
Speaking
we're bringing on yeah, exactly. You're telling us what we're gonna be. You're projecting into the future. No. So we're fortunate to have we have 4 people full time, with like 3-4 other contractors that are either part time or close to part or to full time. And then this summer we're bringing on 4 additional people, so 2 interns and 2 fellows from the fellowship that Nick and I actually met. So awesome. I think we're the good news is that we're on an upward trajectory.
That's incredible, man. And congratulations to you guys. And I think you also shared with me that you guys won a multiple Poly Awards, which is given to by the American Association of Political Consultants. So for those of people who don't know, what does the award stand for in your space?
Yeah, no, that's I'm glad you brought that up. So we were able to win two Poly Awards. Like you mentioned, it's the American Association of Political Consultants, which is more or less a trade association for folks that are doing this type of work, that are doing campaign work, political work, and at any form, advocacy work. The organization deems themselves as the Oscars, or the award ceremony is the Oscars of political consulting. And it's a pretty solid recognition. Only about 17% of entries get selected to be awarded, and there's hundreds of folks who are nominated or enter into win. So we're very fortunate that the first time that we entered into this opportunity that we won two awards. So I think this elevates our brand a little bit. It shows us that we can play in the big leagues, and that at the end of the day, I'm hopeful that this leads to more opportunities to address the issues that we set off to try to solve. But that happened over the last couple of weeks, and it was such a good feeling to know that the fruits of our labor have been tasted well, and people are recognizing it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Congratulations again to you and your team for that. I'm sure that was definitely again, you're a signal to the rest of the people out there that you guys are doing great work, which is always good to have. So let's take a step back. So back in 2018, you co-founded Building the Bench, which is helping Latinx candidates in the state of Colorado. But from an overall landscape, can you talk about what diverse, representation looks like in politics, and what the new wave, if there is a new wave of diverse candidates coming through that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So Building the Bench was my passion project in 2018. And it really stemmed out of my identity as a Latino, as a member of the Latinx community. So when I looked around Colorado, I saw that there was a discrepancy between the representation of this community and the population of Latinos and Latinas, Hispanics across our state. So in 2018, going into the midterm election, there was about 20% of the state of Colorado identified as Latino or Latina or Latinx, and about 10% of our state house identified as Latino or Latina. So almost half. And I truly believe that representation is a barometer of the health of a community, and is a good catalyst to be able to elevate the issues of a community. I recognize that there's nuances in every community. I don't think every community is homogenous or the same, but I do think that if we, at the very least, address disproportionate representation, that we are moving our society in the right direction. So, I partnered with a couple of folks who were active in politics and who had access. And we just set off to, one, raise awareness on the Latinx candidates that were running across the state, and try to elevate their brand and also help them with fundraising. And we ended up, throwing a couple of big fundraisers where we raised, I think, upwards of $20,000 to distribute across these candidates. And in Colorado, I'm not sure if your audience or yourself knows, the campaign finance laws are pretty strict. If you're running for a state house or a state senate position, you could only accept up to $400 in campaign donations per individual. So, so you're out here.
What does that look like in other states? Do you know, in comparison?
Well, it depends. In places like Illinois, their campaign finance laws are pretty loose, so you can take in a lot of money as a candidate, and furthermore, you can, in some places, you can almost accept an unlimited amount of money from PACs.
Yeah.
And from other special interest groups like C4s. So in Colorado, it's we have a good grasp on campaign finance laws to try to make it a little more equitable. Obviously, that unintended consequences results in the inability for some folks, especially folks who come from underrepresented communities, to have access to, big dollars, because you still need money to run a campaign. Some of these local House races where the margin of victory is a couple thousand votes, the winning candidate ends up raising, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a small race. So we set off to try to make it a little bit easier for these folks. And I would say, we did it. We did what we set off to do. We didn't quite achieve our goal of matching the representation of the state compared to the legislator, but we went from 10 folks in the House of Representatives and Senate that identified as Latinx to 14 after the midterm election. So we're slowly chipping away at our goal, and I think at the essence of what I did there was trying to solve issues for communities that normally don't have a seat at the table.
That's awesome. I still am trying to figure out what they expect you to do with $400, but that's for another conversation. Anyway, nevertheless, that's really cool that you were doing that. You saw something that was a need in your community, and you were able to rally people to donate $20,000. That's a lot of money, especially in comparison to the $400 that maybe some candidates are working with. So appreciate you, man. And we'll get to it later. I would love to hear your perspective on like who's the up and comers, but we'll ask that in the lightning round. I'll save that for that. But for those who are like interested in like the political or like social impact industry, like how would you advise people to get involved? People who maybe are dealing with the same dilemma about, the money that may be in that industry compared to maybe working at a Goldman Sachs or in consulting or tech or wherever it may be.
Yeah. This is I love this question because I feel like it's relevant to so many folks in different stages of their life. And I think definitely if I could tie one answer together, it's living the life that makes you the most fulfilled. I think that if you're a person that is solely motivated by money, for instance, you want to make sure that you have the most amount of money in your life so you can live the life that you want. I think quickly you realize that money doesn't solve everything, right? It's very important, and you need access to capital, especially if you want to do projects at scale. But if you're miserable while you're making six figures, then you're going to realize that like, hey, like I'm at a sink in life. I'm not where I need to be. So if I were to advise anyone that is like interested, not just in politics, but in doing something that calls for them, I would say, take a risk, especially if you're young. I feel like young people like ourselves, millennials, I'm not even 30 yet, I'm 29. I think when I looked at my life and I saw where I didn't want to be, I realized that this was my opportunity to take the biggest risk that I possibly could ever take, because worst case scenario, you fail and you have a story of adversity, right? You have an opportunity to bounce back, and the only direction to go is up when you hit rock bottom. So I would say take an unconventional approach. If you're scared, feel that fear, do it anyways. And I think a support system is also huge. Yeah. Most people might not have a solid support system or access to connections, but I think that's where a person can stand out by being vulnerable and putting themselves out there. I've been very fortunate with having mentors my whole life. And I think the reason why I've gotten so much out of my mentorship relationships is because I've never been one to be afraid of asking questions that I have no idea what the answers are, right? Being vulnerable with the fact that like, I'm a kid and I don't know anything. I'm a young adult, I don't know anything. I still feel like I don't know anything. So when I talk to my mentors, I just ask them whatever is on my mind. And I think that a person in a situation to give you advice and guide a young person in the right direction will very rarely turn you away. So if you're a person looking to get into something like this, seek advice of experts, of mentors, and take a risk and jump right in.
That's awesome. And I think my follow-up to that too is like, there are some bad mentors out there. And so I would love to maybe quickly hear from you. How did you discern these people who you trusted to give you this advice? Because kind of back to that Goldman story, you know, this mentor of yours probably could sense that maybe you weren't going to be fulfilled at this position, to maybe ask that question, and for them to ask that question, but then to also help you and guide you. Like, how did you go about finding the right mentors and then trusting their insights and trusting your gut to leave that position?
Yeah, totally. I think that one of the things that has helped me decipher between someone who was going to be a good mentor between someone who wasn't was trying to gauge their actual interest and care for me as a person and as a student and as a professional. I think most people can quickly realize when someone else actually cares about you. Like, if you're an eager young person who is simply seeking guidance and advice, and you're asking questions like, like, what should I do about my next career move? I'm interested in this job or this opportunity, and I'm kind of at a crossroads. A simple question like that can show you whether or not the person on the other side of the prospective mentor actually cares about the outcome of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're trying to put effort to really help you in your pursuit with all of it. So I've been fortunate to schedule quite a bit of informational interviews. I'm sure, in your networking component to your MBA program, I'm sure they talk a lot about that.
They do.
I'm an extrovert. I've never been shy to
Same
send
here.
cold. Yeah. Like, you go to a networking event, you get a ton of business cards. You quickly know, like, hey, like, this is someone I want to talk to and follow up with.
Yeah.
And as you probably never been shy to send a cold email and just position yourself as a student, as a person who's looking for advice, and hopefully, they come back to you and say, yeah, anytime, let's schedule something. So I think the short answer is try to talk to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And when you have that feeling that this is going to work out, I think it's like dating, right? Like, if you go on a couple of dates, you realize, you're feeling one person compared to the other, and
Right.
you transition out of that other person and you continue to try to talk to someone else. So I think different but similar.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree. I think the one thing that stood out to me that I resonate with is like continuing to remain a student. I will try to do that as long as I can. Even when I'm 60, I will act as if I'm a student. I think people take that notion of like, this person actually genuinely wants to learn and they're more willing to provide you with information versus I know it all, but I want you to tell me this one answer. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's something I will definitely take and double down on with that approach. But
Totally.
to close out like the general questions here, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you? Maybe what the end goal is for you in this social entrepreneur journey that you're on.
Yeah. I mean, Justin, that's a loaded question. What's the end goal?
We really want to know, are you going to run for office, man? That's what we
Oh
want to
man,
know.
that's
Come
what you're
on, man.
getting
Tell them.
at. Well, I mean, I think I don't close myself off to the opportunity to running. Definitely not. I think timing is probably the most important thing when someone is considering running for office, because there's so many factors around, position, fundraising, timing in life, like having a family, having stability. So I think the short answer is yes, I'm open to running for office. The long answer is it has to be right. It has to feel right. I have to be in a place where I'm okay stepping into the public arena. Because I mean, I've at this point, my first internship was with a state legislator in 2013 as a straight up intern in the state house. So I've seen, once folks step into the public arena, their life isn't fully theirs anymore. It's
Right.
everything is more or less under a microscope to some, some to greater degrees, some to less degrees. But I know that I still like to kind of have a private life. I still like to take trips and do things that I maybe a political candidate or elected official might not be able to do.
Right.
More or less the freedom. The freedom is kind of what I'm getting at. But
No, I understand.
I do think that holding political office is one of the most powerful levers to community change and social change.
Mhm.
So at this point, I am okay being in the background, helping other great candidates, other elected officials do the work to solve climate change, education issues, education inequities, and voter access without me having to be at the forefront. But we'll see where life takes us.
Well, we're looking forward to, man. I already told Owen I will be backing you guys in some capacity, but I'm looking forward to see what you guys do in the space. I think you guys are leaders, young leaders in the space, and it's really interesting to see. Um, First of all, learning more about what your company does and some of the impact it has done, and seeing what Omen has done at Columbia as well. So I look forward to seeing what the next 5 to 10 years look like for you guys. But I wish you guys nothing but success. So with that being
Thank you.
said, let's jump to the lightning round. I'm gonna ask you some spicy questions here. No, I'm just messing with you.
Oh, let's do it. I know. I'm looking forward to it. I've been thinking about them all day.
so in your bio, I think it's your LinkedIn bio, it says that when you're not serving clients, you're traveling, which you mentioned you visited about 10 countries. You're learning music and riding bikes. So, what do you play and what music are you trying to learn these days?
Yeah. So during quarantine, obviously, everyone had a lot of free time.
Too much.
Too much free time. I am so blessed that I'm a young, healthy person, so I was able to take care of myself, making sure everyone was in a good place with my family and everything. So like most everyone in the world, you took on something that you normally didn't take on. So I'd always had an interest in actually electronic music. So I downloaded Ableton and started just learning how to produce music. And I bought a Skillshare subscription, and I took a music theory class, and I started to just learn how to put together a little melody.
That's awesome. So you did it all on your laptop?
Yeah, all on my laptop. Yep.
Oh, yep. Shoot. So are you trying to be a Timbaland, or what's the motive here? Are you just having it for fun?
I'm just having it for fun. I think the idea of being a DJ sounds incredible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think if I'm okay, truth be told, I'm not sure if I'm musically talented, but if I were and money wasn't an issue, or responsibilities wasn't an issue, I might double down and try to be a DJ.
I like it. I too, man. I'm that would be super sick if I could be a DJ one time. Just go on tour once. Just go on tour once.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, at this point, I'm okay if another famous DJ just lets me hit a drop. I'll just go on, hit a drop, and then I'll walk away, go back into the crowd.
I'm here for that. I want to attend that. That's gonna be super fire. But here's the thing, man. I looked at your Medium, and I saw that you had an article about Tom Brady. Why in the hell are you a Tom Brady fan, man? Come on, man.
Oh man, I feel like this was gonna get me in trouble, Justin. So, okay, truth be told, I'm a Broncos fan, right? Through and through. And I think that, back in 2001, if the Broncos drafted Tom Brady, the 198th pick, the Broncos organization would be very happy about that. So I think that the article that you're referencing, the premise of that, though a loose argument, was that Tom Brady has proven to be the ultimate underdog. That has no relevance nowadays because he just won his 7th ring, and I'm willing to bet any amount of money that he won't ever win another ring again. Because you saw what he did with the Lombardi Trophy after the Tampa Bay win. He was throwing it over over the river or wherever he was to
I
another boat. And
know.
I think the novelty of like the greatest trophy in his field has worn off to the point where you don't take it as serious anymore. So I answer this with hopefully people will take it with a grain of salt, even though they won't. They'll still think, "Why are you a Tom Brady fan?" But I just love the idea of the underdog. I love the idea that someone was not even a contender to be the greatest player to ever play that position, barely drafted, got his opportunity, and did not squander it. And now has continued to show that with hard work and drive and motivation, he can go into a team to take it from, an average team, maybe less than average team in 1 year, all the way to the greatest stage of the sport. From an intrinsic standpoint, I think that the story of Tom Brady 20, 30 years from now is going to be shown as like a true come up story, even though right now it seems really hard because, I want the Broncos to win another Super Bowl. Come on.
I know. Since Peyton Manning, I know, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but maybe he comes to Denver and we come in to win number 4.
Hey, I'm here for it. And truth be told, so I'm a New York guy. I'm born and raised in New York, so
Okay.
I despise everything that comes out of Boston, including Tom Brady. But now that I'm at Michigan, he's a Michigan guy. I'm starting to warm up to the fact, and I did like the championship run, even though he beat baby goat Patrick Mahomes. But
Man, yeah.
but
Patty
nevertheless,
Mahomes.
I know Mahomes, man. That's my Mahomes right there. But at the end of the day, it's all good. I like the story that he had, especially this past year, and I'm looking forward to that Week 1 game against the Patriots
Oh,
next year.
yeah.
That should be fun.
Are you a Giants fan?
I'm actually a Jets fan, which is even worse these days, man.
Oh
It's even
man.
worse, man.
I've always wondered, Justin, like you're from New York, how do you decipher being a Jets or a Giants fan?
The streets decide, man. The streets decide. No, I don't even know, man. I think people typically are like Yankees, Giants fans, and Knicks fans, and then everybody else is like are weirdos. If you like the Mets, you're weird, and I guess if you like the Jets, you're weird. But Rex Ryan, for me, he's an ultimate trash talker. If anybody's ever played sports with me, I'm the same, and so I just kind of identify with that and kept it going throughout all these number 1 picks and terrible years. I'm still here, so
Kept it going. Well, I mean, I think the Jets have one Super Bowl, right? Joe Namath, Super Bowl number 3,
they
or
do.
more than that. Okay.
Yeah, I think they've got one, and with Zach Wilson, we'll see what that looks like. I remain hopeful.
There you go, man. That's the only thing we have is our optimism and our hope.
Facts, big facts. So we alluded to a little bit earlier about your knowledge of the space and how you've been influential in it. Would love to hear from you, like who is somebody we should be watching the political scene? Like who are the up and comers?
Absolutely. So I think I would be remiss not to make a shout out to an Effect client. Matt Rogers out of Virginia. I think he's someone that we need to keep an eye out on. We were helping him with the digital campaign running for House of Delegates in the state of Virginia. He's a grinder. He cares about the community. He's positive. He has a smile like you, lights up a room. And I think sometimes the system gets in place of the merit of a person. So unfortunately, things didn't work out for Matt. But I think the bounce back. Obama lost his first race to Congress to Bobby Rush and comes back and becomes president. I think we have something special here with my friend Matt. So I mean, I would say look out for him. And I honestly think just generally, I think there's a new wave of politics happening. I think that our country is becoming way more socially conscious, especially in the Democratic side, especially with everything that had happened over the last year with BLM and inequities, the 2020 election. So I think that for anyone out there that identifies either as a POC or has liberal leanings to their politics. I think that you're going to really have to pay attention to folks like that are really doubling down on making sure that folks who normally haven't had a chance to sit at the table and make legislation, they are now going to have to be listened to, because more of the same is not going to work anymore. So I would just keep an eye out on those folks who are more or less stirring the pot a little bit, and we're rattling norms, because I don't think that's going to stop.
No, yeah, I completely agree, and it's been really refreshing to see more Black and brown people in the political landscape. I think it's really cool, and women of color as well. So
Absolutely.
super dope.
So I got to say that Stacey Abrams, keep on the lookout, because
Georgia,
she might go. Yeah, Georgia, she might go to the highest office in the land any minute now.
Everybody's watching out to see what her next step is, and
Absolutely.
I'm included. So I'm definitely interested to see what happens. So I always round out the show by asking people, like, what is a music lyric or movie line that you live by? So I got to hear. You've been in the music scene a little bit now. What you got?
Oh man, yeah, I saw this question. I was thinking about it because, yeah, this is a good question, because I feel like there's so many to choose from, especially. So I mean, at first I was hesitant to be a Drake fan, years ago, because everyone was hyped about Drake, and I was, trying to be a contrarian and be like, oh, whatever. But
you gotta love Drake, man.
Yeah, exactly. I think, like anyone, Drake has shown to be, the greatest. I would put him as the Beatles of, the hip hop young generation. Everyone loves Drake, and still to this day, he's coming out with bangers. So I was actually thinking about this last night, and the song that came to me was Underground Kings from the second album, Take Care.
Ooh,
right?
Classic.
Yeah, you put that song on, and you're ready for anything, man. Like,
for real. The way that it comes in, I'm like, yeah, this is it.
Oh man, and honestly, I love old Drake, where he still has that chip on his shoulder. You know what I mean? Where he's still like, he's not the GOAT yet. He's still like I'm seeing where I can be. I know where I want to go, but I'm not there yet. So he's just talking.
Yeah.
And there's one line I had to listen
to
it. Yeah, he's like angry with it. And then he gets to like in my feelings, and he gets a little, he pivots a little bit, but old Drake, where he has a little chip on his shoulder and he's grinding. I think I had to re-listen to it again to remember the line, but there's one line where he says, he's like, make major changes to the life I'm living. I had no choice. I had to prove I made the right decision. And I'm like, oh, that's it.
That's you. That's you. That's definitely that eclipses like your career, like in a nutshell, for sure. I love it.
Yeah. So I had, like I said, I had to re-listen to the song, but I would say if I had to pick one, with 24 hours to think about it, that's it.
I love it. Uriel, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today. I really, truly do look forward to like what the next 5 to 10 years look like. If any of you guys are in the political space, please reach out. This is definitely somebody who's an up and coming. I'm safe to say that you have topped Owen's first episode. I'm going to put it out there already. But again, thank you again so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Justin, thank you. It's an honor to be here on Breaking Bread, and I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. If I can help in any way, let me know. If I can help your audience in any way, let me know. And maybe at some point we could have all three of us on and just chop shop.
I'm here for
yourself, Owen, and me.
I'm here for it. We'll have a alumni reunion.
There you go.
All right, my brother. Take care.
Thank you.